And welcome, everybody. Look at this. We got Philly sports guy in the house. I thought you were going to be on a boat killing a liver in the sun, man.
And that's still going to happen. And I'm hoping that I can get to at the end of the show and where you can kind of see me on the water.
Nice.
I had to stop on because, hey, what a game by the Flyers last night. You know what I mean? It's like they went up against the best team in the NHL, and it was a tight game. It was a lot of good hits. It felt like a playoff game, and they wound up winning it. So much so that the Panthers, I hear, are picking up everybody right now on the trade deadline.
Who all they pick up?
It's that guy. You got to tell me because I don't know.
So they got a Tarasenko on Wednesday, who I don't know if he did he play last night against the Flyers or is he still?
He did not.
Inactive?
He did not.
He should be activated by Sunday, I would guess. The Sabres just got the Buffalo Sabres captain, Kyle Okaporo, I believe his name is, so he should be added to that roster. And I believe they ended up picking up somebody else yesterday too. I'm just gonna look at who else they got. I thought they picked up 3.
I see that Panthers trade.
Maybe it's just those 2 for now. I thought they picked up another one. Those are the 2 big ones that they picked up so far.
Yeah, you know what? I just saw. Who was it? Winnipeg picked up Toffoli. Tyler Toffoli.
Yep, Tyler Toffoli went to Winnipeg.
Yeah, it's a shame that the Flyers aren't making any moves. I understand why.
Hurricanes picked up Evgeny Kuznetsov from Washington, so he'll go to Carolina. Carolina also got Jacob Gensel, so Carolina's also making a crap ton of moves.
It's interesting. The Flyers are put into a number of different trades that have nothing to do with anything that they're doing. Now, interesting, because it's funny because the Gensel trade actually has a Flyers contingent in that if by chance Carolina makes it to the Stanley Cup, first round pick becomes Flyers 2024 second round pick if the Hurricanes don't make the 2024 Stanley Cup final. So they gotta, like, if the Flyers lose, I gotta start rooting for Carolina, which I don't have a problem with because I do like Brindamore. But that's weird. That's just weird.
Seems like the only teams that are making moves right now are the 3 Southeastern teams. Just Tampa Bay also added Anthony Duclair.
Right. There was a lot of moves last night. Yeah. Lots of moves last night.
Nashville got Anthony Beauvillier from Chicago. Colorado got Yakov Trenlin from somewhere.
How about Kuznetsov?
Yeah, Kuznetsov went to Carolina basically less than 12 hours after they got Gensel. So those are 2 big pickups to Carolina, who's trying to chase down Florida right now because I think they're only 4 points behind Florida. So those are 2 monster pickups for them.
Well, yeah, but Carolina's in our division, so they actually are chasing down the Rangers.
No, yeah, but I think the Rangers are like 3 points behind Florida for the best record. I believe Carolina's only 4. So they're all trying to chase down Florida right now.
And I was talking to some of the staff from Florida, from the Panthers, and they were talking about how they aren't really big on winning the President's Cup because they feel like that's the kiss of death. And I told them, I says, listen, you guys aren't the Bruins. So, it's like but that's the thing, though. The President's Cup is like a kiss of death for the Stanley Cup. And the truth of the matter is that Bobrovsky, as great of a goalie he is, I think he feels pressure, and he just doesn't know how to play when that pressure is on top of him. But either way, I mean, I didn't think that there was going to be even this much going on. Like Toffoli, Kuznetsov, Subban's now with the Blue Jackets, and the Blue Jackets aren't even in it. Like, what are they doing?
It's not the same Subban you're thinking of.
That's Malcolm Subban.
No, it's not.
Goalie.
Malcolm Subban's a defenseman.
Goalie Malcolm Subban went to the Blue Jackets.
You see, wasn't the Malcolm Subban the defenseman from Nashville?
I think you're PK Subban is who you're talking
Oh
about.
yeah, PK Subban's who I'm thinking of. Yeah, Malcolm Subban. Yeah, Malcolm was in the AHL.
Interestingly enough, see, this is where it's weird. It's like, so they traded to the Blues, and it's a player to be named later or a pick to be named later. But however, if Florida wins the Stanley Cup, a 7th-round pick becomes a 5th-round pick. Very funny how that all's. There's so many different intangibles that are occurring with different stuff. But the Avalanche were making a lot of different moves. They changed half of their lineup.
Yep.
Colorado.
Wow.
Yeah, the Avalanche have been just busy.
Yeah, and I thought like Edmonton would do more, but no. It's like the same with the Knights. But I guess since the Knights won last year, they're not going to do much. They're going to try to do whatever they can just to get back over there.
Yeah.
I was going to say, it's not like they needed to do a ton, right? I mean, they're still in that wild card spot. Like they're able to run it back with what they had mostly.
Yeah, you know what though? It's you need that pickup to be able to put it into the next year. You need that one guy that does that. And I feel like that's the one thing that I'm nervous about with the Flyers right now is that, it's great. I understand why they're not trying to pick up anything to make a run here because I think that they realize that it's not enough. They don't have enough. And this is a long-term goal, not a short-term goal. That being said, it's good to make one trade to make something occur so that you can get that switch flipped. That's really what I kind of like about it. But I understand why he's not going to. Briere is just not going to do that because he doesn't want to give up. He's actually rewarding this team by not trading anybody, which sounds funny, but that's really the case. They actually re-signed Sealer. Now that they traded Walker, now they re-signed Sealer. So it was one or the other, but not both. Unless that was going to be a sign and trade, and maybe they needed to get that to happen so that they could trade him for a first round. Yeah, they are playing well. You know what? They like I said, but with hockey, hustle, and blocking shots. It amazes me. Typically, when you see a team have the best power, power play, they actually the best. They are one of the best in the league about killing the power play, but they can't score on the power play. I think they've got more goals. They've got more goals shorthanded than they do on the power play.
Yep.
Oh, crazy.
It is. It's odd that that's the case, but that tells me that they're playing a defensive style, which is good because defense is ultimately going to win championships and defense could win you a series. The problem I see is that if Carolina, I like that Carolina made this move now because if they could catch the Rangers and the Flyers can hold on for this playoff spot because the Islanders are coming, that means the Flyers would play the Rangers in a playoff series. And I can't wait for that. I don't think we'd win that series, but that would be an amazing series to watch and would give the Flyers enough for going on in the future for next season.
Yeah.
Like that would be all of that just learning experience for all these rookies getting in some playoff action. Well, it would really make a difference. I just hope that they choose to keep the goaltender and not think that it's the goaltender's fault that they lose.
No, that's fair. I think that'd be a fun series to watch for sure.
Yeah. And what did I see? I saw that the Kraken got rid of one of their guys. I was like, oh, they're sellers.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, their season's kind of done. I mean, unless they were to win out.
Yeah, Wenberg. He's actually a pretty good goal scorer. And send him to the Rangers. That's why I even noticed it because he was going to the Rangers. But I'm excited for the playoffs. I hope we make it. It's like it's going to be tough. We're right now 6 points above the Islanders. and the Islanders are coming on strong here. The Islanders aren't making many trades either, so that's a good thing to see. That means they're not being able to shift it into next year. But one other thing I wanted to talk about before I got to roll out and get onto my boat. But how about Russ going to New York to go have a conversation?
So that's actually what I was going to open the show with today. That's interesting. I can't imagine Giants fans are super excited to have Russ making that stop. And realistically, Saquon's going to be gone, right? So you have a bad offensive line. We've seen Russ with a bad offensive line. So, yeah, I don't know. I can't imagine that Giants fans are stoked about it.
Well, it's like when I saw that, I was like, well, I guess that makes sense to the point that they could get him for a couple of years really on the cheap. Like they could really get him on the cheap because he's owed the money that he is from Denver. So you might be able to get a 3-year, $65 million contract out of him.
Oh, I think you can get him cheap. There's no doubt, right? Because he's already getting paid anyway. So, right. I mean, you can probably get a deal for him. It's just he's not that elusive guy. And if you are behind the offensive line that they had that murdered quarterbacks all season, he's just not that guy. Like, he's going to get hurt. So, I mean, it doesn't matter how cheap you get him. I would much rather you spend that money on an offensive line. Not that Daniel Jones is your guy, but I mean, at the end of the day, Russ isn't going to be your guy probably either if he's on the ground all the time.
Right. Yeah, and I don't believe Barkley's going to be an Eagle. I think that Barkley wants too much money.
Yeah.
And I think that there's only going to be certain teams that will do that.
Yeah.
It's just there's no.
I think the Texans probably make the most sense for Barkley.
Yeah, because him being the veteran leadership there on a very young team would make a lot of sense there.
And they don't have to have him, obviously they can throw the ball, right? So it's not like he has to be the entire offense like he is in New York. So I think that one could be a better fit for him than some of the other options. Obviously they're throwing a bunch of different teams out, but that one probably makes the most sense for that leadership wise. The fact that he won't have to carry 30 times a game to be successful. I think just longevity of his career and fit probably makes the most sense. But I mean, there's some other spots that could work.
Yeah. It as funny as this sounds, I kind of feel like that the Eagles would make more of a play for Henry.
I could see that because you could get him cheap.
Although you can get him cheap, but they like to throw out to and that's where he's deficient at. But yeah. Which makes me think that he would be like another Jordan Howard, where that he's going to bust through the line and carry people, but you're just not going to use him well enough.
No, that's why I thought if you guys were going to make a play for anybody, it would have been Josh Jacobs. Right? Because he can catch.
Yeah, the problem is I think out of all of them, he's going to cost the most.
I mean, I think you're right. But, he doesn't have the injury issue that, the other guys have had. Like, obviously, Barkley has a history of it. You got Henry, who's older, also doesn't really fit their system. But, I mean, mostly he's just older. So you have to assume that he's going to get hurt in the next few years, which is why as cheap as you can get him and as much tread as he has on the tires, it makes me think that he would be on kind of the Cowboys' radar.
Yeah, that's where I think. The problem is that the Cowboys got to really figure it out first. I mean, it's the fact that they are so heavy duty there, and ultimately, I still wonder who's going to be quarterback in the Broncos.
Right? I mean, the Broncos are going to be bad this year, right? Like they're fire selling some of their people, which they're going to have to do because of this cap hit, right? So this year, I think they've just accepted the fact that they're going to be bad. They don't have
That's
the
why
money
I
to
think
get
Drew Lock
anybody.
goes back there.
I,
I think that's a perfect spot for him at $25 million a year. So that's,
I could absolutely see that. Yeah.
you know,
I was actually surprised that he wasn't higher on the list for the Broncos.
so this is the other thing that I was thinking about, that, the Broncos are allowing him. He's not really cut yet.
No.
So and ultimately they could wait to June 1st to cut him rather than March and not take as much of a hit. But if
Yeah.
this goes well today with the Giants, could we see a trade there? Could we see them trading?
Maybe. So
Daniel Jones?
the Giants was yesterday. Today he has Pittsburgh and Vegas, I believe.
Yeah, I don't think he'll leave Pittsburgh. Honestly, I think Pittsburgh wants him. I think Pittsburgh will spend some money for him. They already got rid of Trubisky. They know that Hackett's just not hacking it, and ultimately, again, maybe that's the thing. So he meets with these teams and they trade for one of the quarterbacks. So that makes more sense to me, because they'd still get the cap hit either way. They're going to
Yeah,
take the
I mean,
cap hit
that's
whether
the
they
thing,
cut him
right?
or they get somebody back. You might as well
Exactly.
get a quarterback who is affordable in the process.
Yeah. No, I mean, I could see that, especially like if they were going to go after, like if it's Pittsburgh, I mean, they're not going to go after Mason Rudolph. I can't imagine. So what, they're going to make a play for Pickett? I don't know that that's really a great fit for him either. With the
No,
Giants,
but
they're
again,
not going
but we already have determined that they probably are going to suck this year.
Yeah, but I mean, if you were going to trade for a pick and one of the quarterbacks, if you were trading quarterbacks, right? Like who would you want out of any of these locations? Like I don't see anybody that you'd actually even want to bring in. That's from the Giants. What, you're going to go after Daniel Jones? Not a chance. Um, you don't want either one of the guys with the Steelers. What, you're going to go after O'Connell with the Raiders? Like, I mean, that doesn't make sense either. You might as well just roll with Stidham at that point. So,
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know that they make a play for any of the quarterbacks. I don't think they want any of them. You'd be better off to get a punt returner or something. Be like,
Exactly.
give me somebody that might touch the field.
Understood. So, well, listen, I knew this was going to be short-lived. I'll see if I can come back on when I'm on the boat, but I got to get hopping.
Awesome.
So
Well, have fun out there, man.
enjoy the show. Don't beat up Sonia too bad, because listen, she's in a lot of pain with her Panthers.
Oh man, I mean, they're another team that this year they're just going to be bad. Like they got no cap, they got no money,
No first round pick. You know
no
what I
first
mean?
round pick.
It's
Yeah,
I think
it's bleak.
yeah, it is a little bleak. I wouldn't be surprised though if they just play. They actually have some talent on that team, especially on the defense. So
Yep.
if they were just to feel better about themselves, there's a possibility that they could absolutely be better than they were last year. I don't know how much better that is.
Sure, they can double their win total. Look at
They
them
could,
stepping up.
and still wind up with a top 5 pick. But even then, it's
Probably the number one pick. But I don't think their defense is going to be. I don't think it stays because of their cap trouble. There's a really good chance that they get rid of their main edge rusher in Brian Burns. Because I mean, if they cut him, they save $24 million. And with a team, even with the cap jump, only having 11 mil, which is basically what the cap jumped up to, right? So, right. I mean, that's all they have. So they, I don't know. They may end up with a lot of rookies even on that defensive side, because the only guys that they can create space with are on the defensive side.
True, but see, that's an oucher, because ultimately you don't want a whole bunch of rookies on the defense on a team that stinks already.
I mean, it can't be worse.
Well, it can though, but it can.
Mean, it can, but I mean, if you were going to lose guys, I'd rather lose it on the defense and maybe make it so that Bryce can live through the season. because that offensive line hasn't been great.
And out of all the drops that we've seen, everything that we've seen, these teams are hoarding offensive linemen. They are hoarding them.
Yeah.
I have not heard about anybody being dropped. So ultimately, as funny as this sounds, I'd be willing to bet that Jason Peters goes and plays for Carolina Panthers this year.
That'd be interesting.
I mean, you saw how good he was or how good he isn't anymore. It's like he's got the want. That's the only thing he's got left. And he's got the name and he's big, but he's too slow now. That first step is way bad. You know what I mean? He just can't. That's the problem. Hey, with an offensive lineman,
he looks like a Panther.
well, he looks like he's 4 years past his retire date.
Yeah,
that's the problem. Most players stay 2 years. He stayed 4, but he's afraid. I think he's afraid to go.
Couple.
Yeah, he's afraid. He's afraid to go out of football, which amazes me. But
I mean, I get it. I don't know if he's afraid because he's afraid of what's next. I think it's you just love to play.
True. Well, I think he likes to play. I think he loves to play. But like I said, I feel like he's already lost. I'm gonna have to take that call.
Nope.
He's already lost his first, the first round ballot. Hall of Famer. So.
Oh, sure. Well, right on, man. I'll let you get that phone call and then have fun out on the water. If we see you, cool. If not, have a great weekend, man.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. All right. And of course, we send a shout out to Jay as well. He is supposed to have his knee replacement. And so, hopefully that all goes well. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Pac-12 here. And so obviously we know that a bunch of the schools are leaving the Pac-12 as the Pac-2. And they have a new commissioner in there, Teresa Gold. And, some of the things that it worries me about this is, she was part of the regime that ruined the Pac-12 to begin with. And although, now there's going to be a little bit less pressure because there's only 2 schools in there. So you can't imagine that this is going to be a highly successful conference. She is technically the first, woman in the commissioner role of a Power 5 conference, even though it's not really going to be a Power 5 conference anymore. But, with Washington, Oregon, USC, UCLA, Arizona State, Colorado, Utah, Cal, and of course Stanford, all leaving to other conferences. The ability to rebuild this conference seems like it's probably not going to be a real thing. At best, they're going to merge with a maybe a Mountain West, something like that. But as far as reestablishing as a Power 5, even if you were to do that, you might have the numbers as far as schools, but as far as, strength of schools, it really isn't there. The Mountain West has one real football school in Boise State, and even that is kind of an inconsistent thing. And then, of course, Wazoo and Oregon State, they're not exactly powerhouses year in and year out. I do like what Oregon State is building. They clearly are a team or a school that's on the rise as far as being a football school. Wazoo, again, is, kind of an inconsistent thing. They have years where they're good, but, years that they're not. Now, my biggest concern with her being able to, reshape the Pac-12, let's say that they can, is, again, she was part of the Larry Scott, George Klavekoff, when they were running this thing into the ground, right? Like, that was a management issue. She was part of that management team. So, there's reason for pause to think that she can turn this thing around. And then when you come out with her conversation, I believe it was yesterday or day before, one of the quotes that she had is, I don't think it's accurate to say best case scenario is to rebuild the Pac-12, which you would want your commissioner to, even if they didn't necessarily believe it, you would want them to come out and say, hey, best case, because in theory, the best case should be to rebuild your conference. And for her to be getting into this role where she hasn't even stepped into that part of it yet, already discounting the fact that, hey, this thing's probably closing up. So she goes on to say best case would be to put Wazoo and Oregon State in the best position to succeed and thrive. And although that's accurate, you would want your commissioner of your conference, especially one that is in trouble, to say, hey, we're going to take all the steps necessary to rebuild this or put this thing together. But this makes it sound more like they're going to wait out the 2 years that they kind of have to, with their kind of grace period that the NCAA is giving them. And then ultimately it sounds like this thing's going to dissolve and those last two schools are going to end up in another conference. And I mean, in a way, it would make a lot of sense if they were to go ahead and follow Washington and Oregon to the Big Ten, round that conference out to a solid 20 schools. And then you also get to keep some of those, traditional games, right? So I know that when it comes to Washington and Washington State, right, it's the Apple Cup. It was the last game of the season every year. They are on each other's schedule coming up this year on the third game, but which is already going to be a little bit odd because it's been the last game of the season forever. But you get to keep that rivalry game, right? And same with Oregon State, they have that rivalry game. And, if they were to remain the Pac-12 and say they do merge with other conferences or drag other schools in, whatever that would look like. The NCAA, there we go. Sorry about that. Signal dropped out for a second. Although the NCAA has put them on the schedule through the 2025 season, it doesn't mean that it would continue on past that. So you'd start to see some of these traditions go away. I mean, you're already losing a lot of tradition by the fact that the Pac-12 is folding up essentially. So yeah, I mean, I actually kind of hope that the Pac-12 just calls it a day. They take the rest of the money out of it, which is why they kept it. And then, at the end of that 2 years, when everything, essentially finishes falling apart, they can go ahead and move them into the Big Ten, round that conference out, keep some of the tradition that the Pac-12 is already, going to lose. When it comes to the Apple Cup, they've played 114 of them, right? So it'd be sad to see that game go away. And ultimately, especially based on her quotes the last couple of days, you would think that ultimately the Pac-12 is going to be around for the next 2 years. And that's kind of it. Plus, when you looked at the schedule that Washington State and Oregon are going to have, they're going to have a good record because they're not playing good schools. So not to say anything bad about the schools that they're going to play, but they are not going to be top ranked schools. And so, they have a chance to get into these, that playoff picture this year, right? It expands to the 12 teams. Their record will likely be good enough to potentially get, brought into that, but they're not going to have played anybody and ultimately probably get smoked in the first round. But, yeah, so that's kind of the way we're looking at the Pac-12. It just doesn't look like leadership believes that it's going to be a successful long-term option. Now, all of us from the outside looking at it kind of already thought that anyway. But now when you have the commissioner saying, yeah, we don't, best case isn't really rebuilding it, that doesn't inspire a lot of confidence as far as going forward as a conference overall. So hopefully I'm wrong. I would love to see the Pac-12 live. But that being said, my favorite school is Washington Huskies, and they're not in it anymore anyway. But ultimately, I would rather see some of the traditions survive than just keep a conference for the sake of keeping a conference. All right. So the other, staying on the football front, Ryan Leaf was on, I believe it was ESPN, and kind of leaned into Caleb Williams as far as he's going to, he looks like he needs to sit a year. And Ryan Leaf caught a lot of hate, especially on Twitter or X or whatever it is you want to call it at this point. But the thing that was funny is people were really laying into him, saying he doesn't know what he's talking about, and it was a bad take and all of this stuff, which is hilarious because if there was anybody uniquely qualified to warn against somebody that maybe not have the mental fortitude to do it day one, I think it would be that guy, right? Because Ryan Leaf had the raw talent to do things. He just wasn't mentally equipped to take that jump and carry that weight from the very beginning. And, when you look at some of the quotes that Caleb Williams has put out saying he wants to be immortal, and, some of the various quotes that he's put out, you look at somebody that could get beat up right away in the league, especially because you're going to go to a bad team being the number 1 overall pick, and maybe not being able to handle the stress and, the weight that would come from that position. When you watched him during the season this last year, right? One of the first bad games that he had, he was up, crying with his mom, and I'm not saying anything bad about it, but if you already have that at the college level, you start to look at the NFL, these games are going to get a lot harder, because when you're in college, your best case scenario, right? You're playing the hardest team. You're playing against, 4 or 5 NFL guys, maybe. Now you're going to move into the NFL where the worst team in the league is all-American guys, right? So all of a sudden, competition, even against the worst teams, are significantly better than college. Like, there's very few times that you could say, hey, that college team could potentially beat an NFL team. And it's just because of the sheer amount of talent that's on an NFL roster. So if he's had that kind of reaction to the pressure of lesser talent overall, it does make you worry. And I kind of agree with Ryan Leaf. I think it would be smart for him to carry a clipboard for a little while. Does it last an entire season? Maybe, maybe not. But I don't know that he needs all that pressure day one. And unfortunately, as the number 1 overall pick, you're going to get it. They're going to expect you to play. They're going to expect you to be ready to rock. And can he do it? Hopefully he can. But I wouldn't put money on it. Like, if it was one of my prop bets, I would say he doesn't have a good rookie campaign. I would venture to guess that he's going to be much closer to maybe not Bryce Young, maybe like a Will Levis, but I can't imagine that he's going to have an amazing year. So we'll see. But I kind of agree with Ryan Leaf here. Again, he got crushed for it, but it didn't make sense because he got to witness that falling apart firsthand. So, we'll see how that goes down. But yeah, we'll see. So let's see. We got Bill Belichick might be joining Peyton and Eli Manning on the Monday Night Football Manning cast on ESPN2. I think that could actually be kind of fun. The obviously Bill Belichick is a incredible incredible football mind, and pairing him up with Peyton would actually be kind of fun in the way that they battled each other on the field a lot, right? You had that Peyton and Brady rivalry. Obviously, you have Belichick on that sideline coaching against Peyton. So I think some of those conversations could actually be pretty insightful. Now, I don't know if that's just going to be a third host or if Eli is going to kind of come in and out of that broadcast. I didn't really see how the layout of the show would change, if it would change, but ultimately, I think that would be a pretty fun dynamic, especially as they're going through watching plays, because they're going to be looking at them very differently, right? Bill Belichick is a defensive-minded coach, And of course, obviously Peyton Manning and Eli Manning are quarterbacks. So they're going to look at these formations a little bit different. Some of the attacks a little bit different. And at the end of the day, when you've listened to Bill Belichick outside of interviews, right? Like when it was game time interviews, it was the shortest, most useless answers you could possibly get. But anytime you've seen him at a round table or in an actual interview that's away from the field, he's actually very insightful, actually kind of funny in that dry kind of humor. So I kind of hope this deal goes through. I would watch that, especially, because Monday Night Football is, not always as good of a game as it used to be. So I could see tuning in to see Peyton Manning and Bill Belichick chopping it up. I think that would be pretty cool. All right. So then we are going to go and there we go. All right. So we speculated that Saban was not a huge fan of the the transfer portal and of course the NIL stuff like that, right? And this really confirms that he stepped away because he just wasn't equipped to deal with the way that the players are today, right? And this highlights it right here. So after the Rose Bowl loss, the guys are, what assurances do we have that I'm going to play, and how much are you going to pay me, right? Which, let's be honest, that is not the program that Nick Saban had put together, right? That's not a platform that he built all these championships on. And so then, so I'm saying to myself, maybe this doesn't work anymore. That the goal and aspirations are just different, and it's all about how much money I can make as a college player. Not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it's never been what we were all about, and it's not why we had success through the years. And, ultimately he's not wrong, right? Like that's not the program that they put together. They, it was all about, you're here to learn, you're here to play, right? Like we want the best out of you. We're going to make you better than you think you can be. And so I get why he stepped away. And I get why a lot of coaches are, especially ones that have been long tenured coaches, may not be loving the way this is headed, right? You have the transfer portal where there's multiple openings. You can lose a guy that you already have before the season, during the spring games, during the beginning of the season, right? Because you got portal openings in a few different spots. And it makes you kind of speculate whether or not Chip Kelly going to be, going from UCLA as a head coach where he hadn't been fired yet. All speculation led towards he probably would have been after this next season, but he goes to Michigan and, ultimately, or not Michigan, but Ohio State to be the offensive coordinator. And I think some of that might be for this exact reason is you don't have the same recruiting load as a head coach. You get to kind of keep that coaching element of it rather than recruiting your own guys, recruiting high school guys, recruiting guys from other schools. There's so much work involved. You almost need just a recruiter at this point, as opposed to the head coach or the coaching staff having to take those jobs on, just because until they limit the amount of movement you can do, it's going to be really hard to really know what you're going to put on the field, because you may have a really good, like second string guy that's probably capable of starting other places. And in years past, they would kind of wait their turn and move forward, or earn the spot. Right. And now there seems to be a lot less of, hey, I want to earn this spot. It's more of, you know what? I don't have that spot. I'm just going to transfer out. And, not only does that hurt the depth of your own team, right? Because you have a guy that you thought was going to be there that's now going to bounce out. But it also disrupts the team that they go to, right? So say you were going to be starting at a different college, and that school now deems, hey, we like this other guy, he's in the transfer portal, and you go from being the starter to sitting on the bench. And I mean, that messes with the chemistry of that team, because now they have to learn with a new guy. Not that it's necessarily bad, not saying that, but I get it from a coaching standpoint. If you don't necessarily want to hang out for it, it could be it could be a lot of work. So if I was a coach at that level, I would legitimately be looking at how can I jump to the NFL, even if it was a little bit ahead of schedule ongoing, just because the recruitment trail as a college head coach at this point has to be insane, because it's your team, it's other teams, it's the high school level. And I mean, how much does it hurt the high school kid at that point? Because now your colleges are looking at other schools, right? So you may not even necessarily have the same interest in those or those high school athletes, because you're just trying to rob from other schools. So I don't know. I don't love the way that it is. And maybe it's just because I'm older and I was used to the way that it used to be. But there's something about the way this is constructed today that needs some fine tuning, because being able to rip guys away after the season starts really doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I would much rather, if I was a coach, I would much rather know who's going to be on my team, or at least have an idea who's going to be on my team, than you're entering the season and potentially players are getting ripped away, or you're recruiting other players. Like, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of how that all went down, or how it currently goes down. But, we'll have to see over time if they do ultimately change some of that. It definitely needs some reworking, but we'll see how that goes. All right. And of course, we're going to talk a little bit about the new potential kickoff. The Pat McAfee outlined it fairly well. If you hadn't seen it, I know some people reached out to me to kind of break it down, because they don't watch the Pat McAfee show. I guess they're not into a 3-hour show, which, I guess fair enough. Although this one's a 2-hour show and they watch. So, hey, I don't know. Although we appreciate you watching. So I started to explain it to my wife last night, and this was more or less what she looked at me like. She just thought I was spouting nonsense, because it is a little bit more convoluted than it probably needs to be. But I actually kind of like the idea of where they're going. I'm going to try and get Coach Bonamago on here at some point to go over it with us as well. He was it still is a special teams coach, a long time in the NFL, won a Super Bowl with the Rams. He was tied up today, but definitely going to have him on at some point to kind of talk about his thoughts of where the kicking game is going. And of course, so let's break this down a little bit before we get to the top of the hour and Sonia comes on. So ultimately, it would be moving your kickoff line forward, right? So they still wouldn't be allowed to move. That's going to remain true. But instead of being on your 40, it's going to be on the positive 40, right? So that's going to be a little bit unique. They're still going to kick from the 35. I actually think they'd be better off to move it back to the 30 again, but it's going to be from the 35. And your alignment is going to stay the same, right? 2 outside the numbers, 2 in the alley, 2 in the middle. And then, of course, the kick return team is going to be 6 of their guys are going to have to be lined up on the 35, right? So you're not going to have a huge run up before contact. So this still hits their limiting concussions and stuff like that, right? So it's definitely something that, it fits a lot of the boxes for them. Then you end up with 3 more guys that have to be between the 30 and the 35. So you can still kind of, if you wanted to shade to a side or something like that, you can still have some strategy to it. And so the guys that are on the 35, they have to have a foot on the line. The guys on the 40 have to have a foot on the line. No one's allowed to move until the return guys actually touch the ball or it hits the ground, right? So, and to add a wrinkle to this thing, if it goes out of bounds, it's still going to be a come out to the 40, right? If it lands before the box, their target zone, so to speak, then again, it'll come out to the 40. If it lands, if you kick it straight through the end zone, it comes out to the 35, right? And then if it is in their target zone of the 10 to the 20, if it hits the ground and then goes through the end zone, that comes out to the 25 like it does today. And really what this does is this makes it so that you're going to end up with more returns, right? Because only 22% of kickoffs ended up as a actual return. The rest of them all went through the end zone, or, even if they were caught, they were fair caught a lot of times because of the new rule that they had for this season that still brought it out to the 25. So what it'll do is it'll check the box from the safety end, right? Because these guys aren't getting a 30-yard head start to unload on someone. It checks we want to see more returns because it's something that the new rules had essentially kind of gotten rid of. So, I mean, I like it sort of, right? And of course, this is an XFL hybrid that they're putting together. So, I mean, they did run a version of this in the XFL. So I like the concept behind it because the kick return has definitely been something that has been missing from the game. You still had them, but it just wasn't very often. So I like that this is going to be, if they do implement it, I would imagine they're going to try it in the preseason. I do think that it could help the game. Alignment wise, it'll look very weird, but as strong as these kickers' legs are, it probably does make sense for them to back it up to the 30. Just to get that arc right. And the only reason I say that is it's been so many years of just punch it through the back of the end zone that, moving it back a little bit might help them hit that target zone a little bit better. But, we'll see how that works out. And then, of course, we got the onside kick. So the onside kick mostly will stay the same, right? You'll kick from the 35 and your kickoff team is on the 40. The biggest thing that will change is they're going to go back to what they used to be able to do, where you could overload a side. And that's something that they stopped doing over the last couple of years. But because you almost can't get an onside kick anymore, since your kicking team isn't running, you can't overload a side. Only 5% of onside kicks actually got recovered. So this one, it would help a lot. The only downside is because of the other kicking design, right? Because your alignment is so different, you end up having to declare. So there's going to be no more Pat McAfee, surprise onside kicks, right? So now you have to declare that you're going to do an onside kick. And of course you are going to, you still don't have a running start. So, I mean, it's still going to be very hard to get an onside kick. You also have to be down in the fourth quarter to even be eligible to try one. So it is going to take that surprise element out of the game. But, by and large, you weren't really able to do a surprise kick anymore anyway, just because at the end of the day, you didn't have that running start anymore. So we'll see if they implement it. I think it could be good for the sport overall. Just because we want to see more kick returns. It's something that, we just haven't seen very much, but, yeah, so that's more or less how the kicking game is going to go together. Hopefully, let's see, hopefully it adds a little more excitement to that end of the game, But all right, so we're going to go just about to the top of the hour. We're going to go do our commercial break. And then when we get back, we are going to have our special guest, Sonia, with us. We're going to talk a little bit about the Panthers and what kind of trouble they're in. All right, let's see. All right, see you guys at the other end of the break here.
This is Reggie Jones, owner and founder of Air Sports Academy. Air is based on 4 core principles: heart, education, integrity, resiliency. Air is about developing student athletes physically and mentally through training, mentorship, and effective marketing. We've created a platform and a blueprint for our state to shine in the brightest of lights. I created this program because it was a need for our state. We needed to have the light shine on the student athletes in our region. And now that is happening at an all-time and undeniable rate. We created a lane for the kids in our state to get their college education paid for and set their families up for future success. We created an environment where serious athletes can now come compete fearlessly. We've achieved this through our variety of elite programs. Our 6-month off-season program, where first-year starters or seasoned vets can all come develop. Our 5-on-5 program, which is all about our line. Our youth tackle program, which is the first and only youth tackle team from the state of Washington to ever win a major national championship. Our 7-on-7 program, which is ranked top 10 in the country every year. Our high school 11-on-11 club tackle program, which creates unique and much-needed opportunities for our kids. Our college prep program, which allows our graduates to come back from college and prepare for the upcoming season. Our track and field program, which creates an opportunity for our young air boys and air girls to continue to get faster. When you're a national program, you receive national respect, which is why when you look at recruiting boards and top player lists from around the country, you'll always find players from Air on those lists. Which is why college coaches from some of the most prestigious schools around the country come into our facility to recruit our players. The Penn State, Alabama, Oregon, Stanford, Florida State, the list goes on. Our players are being recruited, offered, and committing to some of the top schools in the nation. The experience our players and families receive is second to none. We offer a competitive brand of sports at Air. We are the ball. And with that comes great responsibility. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. Legendary.
All right, so you've seen her all over the Northeast Streaming Sports. There we go, man. Just mind blanking today. All things football, and of course, help me bring in Sonia. How you doing? Oh, you're muted.
Hi, Bo. Good afternoon. How are you?
Doing great. How are you?
I am so great. Thank you so much for having me on here. I had to drop in on my lunch break and say howdy doody.
I appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
All right, so we got to talk about your team. It's sort of a bleak outlook. You know, the salary cap goes up, and basically how much it went up is what your salary cap availability is.
Yeah, which is not really helpful for us, to be honest with you. We're still making cuts. They just franchise tagged Brian Burns. Once again, the entire Shaq Thompson's name's coming up. Just releasing or possibly releasing a lot of guys. As everyone knows, the Carolina Panthers, my team, did quite a few shuffles to get the number 1 pick last year with Bryce Young, taking him number 1 in the draft. And unfortunately, Chicago clearly did their homework. They knew basically they were just loaning this pick out, to be honest with you, because here we are paying it back with interest. We don't have a pick in the first or the second draft. I think we have one in the later part of the draft, but we gave them our first and second pick. We also gave them a pick next season. We gave them DJ Moore. I still don't understand what Christian McCaffrey had to do with that switcheroo, but he's out in San Francisco doing great things. And we're here with new managers again, new coaches again, a questionable offensive line, as well as a second-year kind of like continued rookie quarterback at this point because he didn't really have anyone to shadow.
Yeah, I mean it's not great, and of course, having just under 12 million in cap space doesn't exactly say like you're going to go get anybody either.
Right.
So the fact that Burns is so they franchise tagged him.
It's coming up or releasing him, one of the two. They've basically given him permission to look elsewhere. That was what I read yesterday. Did you have new news today, Bo?
Well, I thought he had another year on his contract because his cap hit is 24 million.
He does.
So, I mean, they wouldn't need to franchise tag him yet, but now if they release him, they save all of it. They save all of that 24 mil. If they release him pre-June 1st, I believe.
Okay, I knew it was something about March 18th. There was an article that came out from the Panthers Wire that basically was talking about March 18th. Yeah, looks like they're saying franchise tag.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'll have to look into that because that's. I thought he still had another year on him, but ultimately, I mean, I feel like you guys got to let him go. That 24 mil could help bolster some of that offensive line, right? Which, let's be honest, you guys need a lot of help on that side of the ball if you want to keep Bryce Young on the field.
Yeah, and actually, Bo, while I'm looking at it, as of 2 hours ago, SI.com, Sports Illustrated, basically spoke about the Panthers, and they are saying many expect the Carolina Panthers to take a receiver or offensive lineman with the first pick in the second round. But the reality is they're going to take the best player available regardless of the position. Best available players, they got that list going out, but then they also go down and talk about, because I've been at my regular job today, Bo, so I had not had a chance to look at the latest Brian Burns news, but either way, I thought he did have a year left as well. I think it's a scramble in Carolina, to be honest with you. No matter what they decide to do, it's mismanagement across the board. They literally talk about SB Nation. Literally had this whole article about the nightmare that's going on in Carolina. It's extremely difficult to continue to be a fan. It's one thing to lose, but when you're in a position that you can't even, get any assistance, and then there's a continuous coaching carousel. Now we have a quarterback, kind of like a carousel, honestly, but Bryce is now there. He's a rookie. And then even a GM carousel, because we don't have a general manager right now. We just still have Tepper the Tyrant, for lack of a better, it's kind of like off with your head. And so he brought in Dan Canolis from Tampa. He's basically saying Dan is 42 years old. He's like, I want someone that's going to be here 30 years. And I'm like, okay, yeah, he's not going to be there. And even though you're saying that, it doesn't matter what contract he gives you. We're still paying Matt Rule. We're still paying Steve Wilkes. Like, he just will continue to pay you. I was like, maybe I should suit up and go down there and lose a couple of games, just get a check forever. So,
I've said that same thing. It's like, if you were going to be a coach and you probably weren't going to be great, you just be like, yeah, let me go down there for about 4 months, lose a couple of games to start the season, and then, collect millions on a yacht.
Yeah, collect. I mean, I would really love that. That'd be great, to just do absolutely nothing. And so, no matter what they end up doing with Burns, it doesn't look like he's going to come back next season. Either way, I don't know what the final thing will be, but they've talked about both. But he did have a year left on his contract. His name came up last year in talks of getting rid of him in one way or other, either trading him, franchising him, or just releasing him. So we'll just have to see. We literally are just in seatbelts all the time with Carolina right now these days.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's some things that you guys can do, like so on the offensive side, right? O-line. Realistically, I feel like you guys need to get better offense and defensive line. The rest of the positions, obviously, they need work as well. But if your lines aren't good, no one else is going to be good anyway. Yep. So I was looking at just your offensive line play from last year. right? You had 7 different players go through the left guard position, 8 through the right guard position, right? Like that is a really tough way to try and protect a quarterback if you can't keep the same people in front of him. And I could actually see them using the second rounder on an offensive lineman. Now, I think your 2 guard positions, if why am I mind blanking their name? Here we go. Brady Christensen and Corbett. If they can get healthy, I think they are good in that position. You don't have depth there, but at least they are effective there. So if they can get healthy this year, unlike last year where they got knocked out right away. But your center, Bozeman, he allowed the 3rd most pressures, right, during the year. Now, is some of that because you didn't have good guard play around him? Possibly, but he still did well in the run game, right? So I think if you used that second rounder on Oregon center Jackson Powers Johnson, I think that could help solidify.
Really good. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, I think that could solidify your front 5 there, and maybe give Bryce Young a chance to throw the ball while he's still, vertical.
Yeah, I don't know. The pocket consistently collapsed around Bryce. Like he had to drop back. If anyone doesn't know, Bryce is only like 5'10", and that's what the combine or whoever gave him. He doesn't look like he's 5'10", to be honest. He looks more like 5'9", but
he's wearing lifts.
Yeah, he's wearing lifts. They claim that at the combine and all this stuff, they measure him barefoot. I'm like, but I've always heard that they give you an extra inch. And Baker Mayfield was 5'10", and I don't remember him having the same. I don't want to say that the O-line didn't ever collapse. I don't remember him seeing the same consistent collapses that I've seen this season. This season was extremely difficult. I mean, Bo, I cannot tell you how depressing it is to go, only win 2 games. It's the worst, we've been in franchise history. Yeah. And Dan Orlovsky said it best, when Bryce came in, that we'd probably need 32 months or 30 months. And I was just listening, don't say that. But then after seeing the season, he was right. We're 1 season down. And people always like to ask me, would it have been a difference with CJ Stroud? And I honestly do not think so. We may have won maybe a couple of extra games, but the O-line is the issue. And without those weapons and with a new rookie quarterback that has not acclimated to the NFL, even though CJ Stroud just went in blazes blowing out there, didn't even need any type of acclimation. He's clearly a different type of quarterback. And so, we're still suffering.
Yeah, I mean, you guys gave up so much to go get him. It was just kind of you got rid of so much talent and picks. And I mean, I don't know how they thought he was going to have success. So then for them to be firing coaches the way they did too, it's like, well, what did you expect? You got rid of everyone he could throw or hand the ball to.
I'm going to tell you,
an offensive line.
Yeah, I feel like it wasn't always getting rid of players because of their performance. For instance, I was at the Atlanta Panthers game here in Atlanta. DJ Moore scored a touchdown, then excessive celebration, removed his helmet and everything. We ended up losing that game. We could have won that game, but because of the penalty and them calling that score back, we lost by a field goal. And so I feel like Tepper, again, like I told you, he's very emotional, at least the way he's moving about. You sent DJ Moore to the Bears, and now DJ was looking good out there. He's putting up good numbers. I still don't, like I said, I don't think Christian upset him or anything, but Christian went to the Super Bowl. So that says, and they clearly used him. He wasn't injured as much as he was in Carolina. And the injuries come from a lack of protection. They come from a lack of consistent weapons on the team. It doesn't come from, he just pulled a hamstring because he moved the wrong way. No, he's moving the wrong way to avoid being tackled because you're not protecting him. So there you have it. The writings on the wall, on the windows, everywhere. Everyone knows Carolina's number 32.
Yeah, well, I mean, and we watched that for years in Seattle, right? We've had a bad offensive line, and although we've had great running backs, we hadn't had a running back make it through the season since 2014.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
been a minute.
Yeah. I mean, that was around the time Beast Mode and
That was his
Russell.
last year.
Yeah. Right after he had the stomach surgery, right?
Yeah, the
He
14
came
was
back.
his last full season
Mm-hmm.
without injuries, and then ever since then, even having good running backs, just for whatever reason, the offensive line couldn't hold up, and they've gotten hurt every year. And I mean, it's one thing to have a bruising type of running back, and the first guy he's hitting is a linebacker. Then when your line breaks down, and instead of hitting a guy that's roughly the same weight, you're hitting a 6'5", 350-pound Samoan dude,
Yep.
you're going to lose that battle every time. And, if you get hit consistently like that behind the line of scrimmage, you're going to get hurt. So it makes sense that a guy like CMC would get hurt with the Panthers. Cause I mean, there were a lot of times that he got rocked behind the line of scrimmage, and CMC is not a huge guy.
No, he's not. And his dad, Ed McCaffrey, football legacy already in their family. He's got the heart, the soul. I mean, they always said his legs kept churning, and I literally saw him in the Rams game in Charlotte a couple of years ago. Well, it's been a few years. I digress with the time, Bo. It's just been such a long season. But he literally injured a player because they were trying to tackle him, and his leg, kept on churning. Like they had to cart the guy off. I can't remember who he injured, but Chuba Hubbard has tried to step up in the absence of CMC, even when CMC was still on the roster. Chuba Hubbard got some exposure, looked very similar. I know a lot of people always talk about the fact that the Saints were 9 that year and we were 8, and we passed on Alvin Kamara and picked Christian McCaffrey. I don't have any regrets about that at all. In fact, because now Kamara is coming up as being questionable performance-wise, but the shelf life on a running back is not that long, especially when you're using them the way Carolina was using them. Like they literally had so many running plays that the only way they could win games was to use McCaffrey. Like you could see when Darnold was there and Darnold was playing, it was like every target almost was, McCaffrey, handoff McCaffrey, because, we played teams that had really good defense. And so Darnold, of course, was no longer there. McCaffrey got hurt, a little bit. And so when he was out there, we already knew going into the game, we're probably going to lose this game because Christian's injured. And anytime you could say that, and he's not the quarterback, that's saying something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was Darnold, right? It's not like you're I mean, you go from your previous location where you're seeing ghosts. I don't think it's going to get better the rest of the way.
God, I mean, he doesn't have any, like right now, Bryce doesn't have anybody to really shadow. They haven't confirmed whether or not they'll bring Andy Dalton back. I love Andy, the Red Rifle. I loved him when he was in Cincinnati as a Bengal way back when. I've always been a fan of his. He's a journeyman a little bit. And right now it's kind of shocking to see him going in a 2 position, as a backup. I just really thought that, my personal opinion, and a lot of Panthers fans disagreed with me, but I felt like, they should have, given everything else going on with Carolina, knowing that there wasn't a whole lot that Bryce was coming to, they should have, at a minimum, allowed Bryce to shadow or even play, partial games until he could acclimate with that poor system, because he's coming from a stellar school, in Alabama. But this is the NFL. It's the best of the best, supposedly. And with the exception of what we have going here. And so, if he wasn't going to be protected, Andy Dalton can take those hits. He's a vet in the league. He knows what it's like to have a crumbling offensive line. He's played with different teams that have a lackluster performance. And I feel like that would have given the momentum that Bryce needed. And even, to be able to get in there physically and get it done. But Panthers fans were like, no, we sold the farm to get him. It would crush his ego if he's benched. We're like, no, he's not benched. He's acclimating. But now it's too late to kind of unscramble the eggs,
Well, I mean, that's always the thing, right? Like, I like if you draft a guy and you have a vet, let the guy sit, right? I know for whatever reason that the NFL has moved towards if you're drafted in the first 5, you're playing, right?
Yep.
And all the talent may be there, but you may not be able to just handle the pressure of that moment. or like in this case, you're just going to a team that, you know, the offensive line is going to let the defense run roughshod on you. And so that's not a great way to learn, right? You don't need every play to be the welcome to the NFL play, right? Like you're going to get a couple, but you don't need every down to just get trucked. So I'm a big fan of having a vet, letting a guy sit, learn behind him. And, you know, people forget that Mahomes got to have that opportunity, right? They're like, oh, Mahomes was great from the jump. Like, well, yeah, you had Alex Smith, right? So there's a lot of these guys that were able to sit. Now, do some of them come in and ball out? Sure. You watch CJ Stroud. Awesome. Right. But they had a little bit of a unique situation. So he got to go to a team that wasn't as bad as it could have been because of all the picks that they had picked up. So I don't know. I like when they let him sit. What you can't do is start him and then pull him out for that vet. Like you can't do that. Right? Because that is a confidence killer. So if you start them behind the vet and then you bring them in, you know, during the season, if you're struggling, or maybe they sit the whole year, you know, whatever, that can work. But yeah, you can't put the genie back in the bottle if you let them start and then pull them out and then think they're going to be okay if you put them back out there. If they get hurt, sure. But if it's, oh yeah, just sit down. It's like, yeah, you're gonna hurt any kind of progress you would have had that season.
Yeah, I like, you know, how Green Bay has done it consistently. We saw Aaron Rodgers come in and under Brett Favre, and you know, Brett goes down. Here's Aaron's debut. He looked ready. He was there. And then now with Jordan Love, who I'm gonna be honest, I've talked about this at length a couple of times this week on the show. Last night I had Todd Fritz from the Dan Patrick Show on my show, and we were talking. Yeah, we were talking about that. And a cool stat is this season saw 60 different rookie quarterbacks start a down in the NFL because of injuries. And so there was a quarterback carousel for real with a lot of teams. And to me, that really, like, a part of me is like, okay, well, Carolina's part of that. We're just like everybody else. But then everybody else didn't lose, you know, every game too either. I mean, I think they I think they even counted the bye week as a loss for us too. That's just how bad it was.
Yeah, no, it was crazy the amount of injuries to quarterbacks there were this year. I think honestly, a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're not allowed to hit in preseason anymore, right? Like you don't have any of your starters playing preseason really. Your OTAs, your, you know, preseason camps, all of that, it's super limited on, you know, real speed reps. And, you know, there's a lot of positions that you don't necessarily need all of those reps to work, but the positions that you do need is receivers and offensive line, right? Because you need to get that timing down in real speed environments. And, you know, when you looked at going into this season, how few starters actually played in the preseason, and then you watched week one, offensive line play was horrendous. And it was essentially a preseason game, right?
Yes.
Like it was really bad.
Yeah, because that was their first time actually taking the field in a position, like you said, of being hit. I mean, I guess for me, I can kind of see a little bit of it because they're like trying to protect their star players. But then you look at Aaron Rodgers goes down 4 snaps into the first game. So clearly he should have been practicing and passing. He's a vet. For him to have that type of injury, I literally was like running my DVR back, like, wait, did that just really happen? Like, it was unbelievable that the Jets had gone all in and they were on Hard Knocks and all this stuff. And, you know, even the creator, writer of The Voice of God, they said on Hard Knocks, flew in to see Aaron Rodgers once he knew that he was going to be, you know, part of the Jets organization. But all in all, they need to at least have some type of practicing. I mean, it's almost like they're doing flag football at the preseason. They're doing flag football for the Pro Bowl now. It's almost like, and I've talked to, you know, Pat Williams was on my show, former Minnesota Viking, former Buffalo Bill, and he was literally saying that this is the issue. The players are now too guarded, too soft, for lack of a better word, that they're limited in performance when it's time to really hit. And you brought it up good, Bo, when you said, if you're a smaller person, I don't remember the exact number you gave, but you hit someone 6'5", that's like 300 pounds, you're running to a brick wall, you have injured yourself. So I don't know what the solution would be. Maybe the league could take a look at that. They're doing everything else. They've killed the offside kick. I heard you talking about the lineups that they're changing. They definitely need to look at this, because in the end, what they thought would be, beneficial is turning out to be detrimental to their star players going into the season.
Well, especially since they got rid of one of the preseason games, right? They get rid of one of those to add one to the season.
Yep.
But that means you have one less game to evaluate your 90-man roster, right? To get down to your 53, which means, again, a lot of your starters aren't playing. And it's just like, man, not having those live reps on a position like the offensive line, like, it's a really good way to get a quarterback hurt. Now, do I have a conspiracy theory that, that's why all these quarterbacks got hurt? No. I mean, obviously, a lot of these guys got hurt throughout the season. Everybody got up to game speed after the first few weeks, but still, it made for really just ugly football. I guess that's my biggest issue with it, is I don't like seeing bad football.
Yeah, it's been bad. I don't know. Like I said, it's either bad from the perspective that they're just allowing all this extra stuff to go on to nothing. It's no middle ground right now. It's either, we're going to just, we're going to penalize everything, or we're going to penalize nothing, or we're going to flag football this, or we're going to go all in and then hurt everybody like one big pile up. And it's kind of hard. It's like, I don't know. The game has really changed, in my opinion. I'm hoping it's just this season that I feel that way. This has just been a really unpredictable season in the past. Like, we came into the season thinking certain teams were definitely, postseason contenders, Super Bowl runs, perhaps. And I mean, no one was surprised to see Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. Let's be clear. But to see the 49ers over, the Lions, who came out of nowhere, and they're definitely getting it done, or to see Dallas fall again, that was a shock, because I literally was like, week 2 or 3. Oh no! I mean, they're okay. So the stats are there. They do always finish 12-5 for the last 3 seasons. San Fran usually is their kryptonite. They did not think that Jordan Love was going to show the love he did to them, and
I mean, they struggle with Green Bay too, though, historically.
Yes, but not with Aaron Rodgers. This is the first time I saw them not only struggle, they were humiliated, because it was almost like a sleeping giant. They went in there, they were at home, Bo. They were talking about how at home was, their sanctuary. This is how they get it done. On the road was where they struggled. So everything aligned for them at home, and they still lost it.
I agree that the narrative was there, but if you watched their last few home games, they weren't the victories that they had earlier in the season, right? Like they got lucky against Detroit. They snuck by Seattle, right? Yeah. Like the Seahawks almost had them. Yeah. So I mean, you look at their last few home games, it's not like they were tearing the cover off the ball, right? Like their earlier games, 100%, but coming down the stretch, even at home, they were struggling to get those wins. Now they still got them, but it's not the way you want to go into the playoffs, right? That's kind of that, or like Philly, where they really backed into the playoffs, right? They just lost everything down the stretch. So I didn't have a lot of confidence. Now, some of that is probably a little bit of the cowboy hater in me that,
join the club.
Yeah, right. But I mean, when you look at them historically, they really just kind of forget how to play football in December and January, right? Like Thanksgiving comes, that's a coin flip if they win that game or not. And then really every game after that's a struggle. Like they'll win 1 or 2, but really the playoffs, they pack it in. They're like, they already got Cabo in their mind.
I can't. Yeah, it's literally, and you're right. The Detroit game, let's be clear. I feel like Detroit won that game. I don't know what Brad Allen and that ref crew were doing or thinking. The guy was clearly there, like they showed it. I felt so bad because, the Lions have not ever had a Super Bowl. They've never been to the Super Bowl. They have a championship from 1957 before the Super Bowl was formed. Their last playoff run was 1992 and 1993 when they had divisionals. but they have not been to the Super Bowl. And you know, that team with Amara St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs, I mean, they looked solid. And then you got Jared Goff holding up the main roster. Matt Stafford went in there and was like, you know, out of the 12 years he was in Detroit, he never heard Ford Field so loud. Those fans were roaring. They were Lions for real. And
they were hungry.
They were, and they'll be back out of their den next season. I really believe that. Even though Dan Campbell said it's really difficult to get back, that's a fact. It is difficult to get back, but I feel like they will be back. And I feel like Dallas cheated that game. You're kind of right. It's like how people talked about Lamar Jackson. They said he always chokes in the postseason. Can't seem to get, you know, where he needs to be. And I honestly thought between the Ravens and the Dolphins, those would be the AFC champions. One of those two, not the Chiefs.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that was weird when it came to the Ravens is they just abandoned the run game altogether, right?
Yep.
And that made no sense because it was such a huge piece of what it is they did. So for them to just not do it at all, and honestly, it's why San Francisco lost too, right? They come out in the third quarter, they ran the ball 3 times total. You have the lead. Why wouldn't you lean into what was working?
Yep.
And, you know, ultimately they lose that game. So I don't know why on both of those coaching staffs that they were just like, you know what? We're good at this, so we're just not going to do it.
It's crazy. It's almost like a mental block just came out of nowhere. Like, oh yeah, we're doing it. But yeah, and I was just like, no, what is happening? Like what you got already works, stick with the program. It's almost like you know, trying to show off, for lack of a better word. You know, when you're so far there, you're like, oh, I got this. You get real, you know, into yourself, you know, haughty toddy, as they say, and there you are, you know.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, no, it was weird. Detroit is going to be interesting on if they can get back. They do have an interesting history. So that I think their first year, they weren't actually called the Lions yet, but their first year, I think it was 1934, something like that.
Yeah.
And they have not had back-to-back double-digit winning seasons ever.
Yeah,
34 was like a long time ago.
That's crazy. Yeah, like before my parents were born. Jeez.
I mean,
That's
90
crazy.
years you've never pulled off back-to-back winning seasons is amazing, or back-to-back double-digit winning seasons, I should say. So then you almost come into the season like, do they fall apart?
Yeah, you know, and that's how no one saw him coming. But you know, Dan Campbell played for the Lions. You know, he's the right person. He's kind of like akin to how Ron Rivera was when he played with the Bears and then later was like working with the Bears, you know, as a coaching, you know, specialist and everything. But now it's like Dan Campbell has the feel good story. They have the weapons there. Like I remember, I remember when they switched with the Rams and, you know, sent Matt Stafford out there. I could not believe that because, you know, I'm one of these people that I follow the off-field stories as well. And I knew that Matt Story's wife, Kelly, had brain surgery, and they talked about how the Lions rallied around them as a family. You know, really, he had been there for a very long time. You know, his whole career was with the Lions. And he looked, you know, the gunslinger. He looked decent to me. But all of a sudden, here they are with this trade. And I was like, why would they trade for Jared Goff? Like Matt Stafford is the face of the Lions. And we didn't see it right away, but then we saw it right away. Like as soon as it was almost like the best thing for Matt because he and the Rams went and got it done and got the ring. And, you know, Detroit was like egg on your face. Like, should we have really let him go? And so now we have Jared Goff that, you know, we need to see what you can do with, you know, the Lions.
Well, and he balled out, right? And ended up beating him heads up. So, I mean, it's one of the very few trades that you look at it and you're like, you know, both teams did well in this trade.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, the Rams, they threw all their money in, they got their ring, right? Awesome. You know, when it comes to Detroit, they saved some money picking up Goff, and Goff has looked good. Like he's been playing the best football of his career, really.
Yeah, and I remember when they went to the playoffs before, he and Sean McVay were like the youngest coaching quarterback duo in
Yep.
history when they did go to the Super Bowl then. And I think that was the same season that the Saints sent out the petition because they were upset that they lost. Who did the Saints lose? I can't remember. They were cheated. The Super Bowl ended up being played in Atlanta. They had billboards all over Atlanta talking about basically how they should have been there because they had lost against the Rams. They had a petition. They had a petition going around, and it was pretty funny because I'm in an NFC South, a few groups, and they were really like angered. And I was just like, "Hey, how would you feel if the Super Bowl was in New Orleans and Falcons fans came to understand they were cheated and putting up billboards and stuff?" And they were like, "Go away, Panthers fan," blah blah blah. But yeah, I mean, they were really angered about that.
It's funny because you can actually, when it comes to, the NFL, you can actually file a petition to have a win looked at, right? To try and overturn a win. I don't think it's ever actually worked, but I mean, when you look back through history and you got teams that were obviously cheating and they don't vacate wins, what makes you think that petitioning because of a call is going to get you that win? Like that, it seems insane to me, but it is funny. There have been a couple of those, officially put in, but they never did anything.
I mean, Des Bryant had the controversy non-catch against Green Bay when Dallas was playing Green Bay to go to the Super Bowl this season. I think it's 2016-17 when the Falcons went, and they didn't send a petition. And that's Cowboys. They definitely felt like they were going that season. And so Green Bay goes on. I mean, they were beat up pretty bad. I remember Jordy Nelson had broken ribs, and it was just bad. Dallas really beat them up so bad that they were like, yeah, you can go on and win, but you won't win far because we've sent you handicapped into the next game. But the refs came back later and said that they had the call wrong and that it was a catch.
Sure.
And Dallas fans were outraged. They felt like they really missed the Super Bowl. Same thing when the Panthers were in the Super Bowl. Jericho Cotchery had that critical catch that they said was not a catch. That changed the entire momentum of the game. Refs come back afterwards like, oh, guess what? It was a catch. We've already lost like 21-23-10. I don't know, to be honest with you, Bo. I never watched the end of the Super Bowl because I was so upset. After that, I have yet. It is still recorded on my DVR. And it's been 8 years, almost 8 years. I've never watched it. I didn't know the final score until I saw it like scrolling across something on the bottom as a tickler. And I just remember being devastated. So, yeah.
I mean, I feel like you can just erase that one off your DVR.
I haven't brought myself to do it. It's funny because I was looking the other day at like my history and I was like, I need to bring myself to watch this game one day. I need to just get through it. And like even during the pandemic, I was showing some games too. I have the all-female fan club of the Carolina Panthers, the Carolina Pantherettes. We had about 12,000 members. We have still right around 10. We have around 10. Some people left when Cam came back, the Camonites. They're really Cam fans. And so he left again. But I was showing games during the pandemic because, for a while it was like no football for a little bit as far as like having fans and stuff. So midweek I'd show an older game, I'd like set my laptop up and play, what was from my DVR so the ladies could watch it. I was like, just don't show it, because I don't want to have an issue with NFL, even though it's on my DVR.
No doubt.
So it was funny. I came to the Super Bowl game. I was like, next game, skip on over that one. And people were messaging me like, hey, I think the next game really should be the because we were undefeated that season except for one game. So everybody was all hyped, like, yeah, this is the way we want to be, blah, blah, blah. And they were like, okay, so the next game logically, Sonia, should be the Super Bowl. I was like, yeah, we're gonna skip on over that one.
You're like, should it though?
Yeah, really, we're riding high here. We lost to the Falcons, but it's one little hiccup. Last game of the season, we were undefeated against everybody. And it was the best time of my life as a sports fan.
Yeah, that 15-1 season was pretty impressive. That's another team that with Cam, he never had back-to-back winning seasons, which was crazy, right? Like he'd have a good season and then they'd be terrible for whatever reason, and then they'd have a good season. Like it was the most weird, inconsistent team through that Cam Newton era it was just weird.
And even when he came to Atlanta, because I live here, but my team is the Panthers because I'm from North Carolina. Every time, Bo, we played Atlanta in Atlanta with Cam, we would lose. And I was like, it's almost like because Cam is from Atlanta. What is it that you're coming home and you cannot win the game? I'm so like the Falcons tried to knock him out. These hits on him were brutal. One, literally, he was out for a couple of seconds. He got up or what have you. Because Cam's a running quarterback, 6'5", 240, like a big dude,
Well, and that's why you never get those calls. Because Ben Roethlisberger didn't get him either.
Nope. And he looked like, they call him Big Ben. He looked like a Big Ben clock, like a grandfather clock. That's what I always said about Big Ben. But Cam was actually hit more than any quarterback in the league during that time. But once again, we go back to what was your O-line looking like? The O-line was looking decent back then, but Cam still would come out of the pocket and became a running quarterback. So once you become a running quarterback, you're no longer a defensive player and you're fair game on anybody. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because when you think of Cam, like there's so many elements to it, right? Because he's kind of a weird dude, and so you see his gameplay on the field, right? Former league MVP, just a monster of a human, right? And then you look at just his off the field, like press conferences, things that he'd say. You're just like, dude, you should probably just not talk. Right. And then like, I remember, one of them, he ended up losing a bunch of sponsors because he put his foot square in his mouth. Right.
Yep.
So, I mean, there's that element to it. There's I'm not going to jump on a fumble in the Super Bowl, which is crazy. Absolutely crazy. I imagine as a fan, you guys were losing your mind. But then you look at what just happened in Atlanta. Right. And, he does a lot with youth football, right? And which you commend him for. I mean, I'm not a huge Cam fan, but what I see happen at his camps is absolutely wild to me, and it makes no sense at all when you look at, because this one, there's an altercation, right? There's video of it, whatever, right? But when you look at some of his other camps, you see kids that are in those camps talking sideways to him, and that is insane to me. Because if I was one of those kids, right, when I was getting into football, if I had the opportunity to have a former league MVP come in, right, I'm not talking crazy to you. I want to learn everything you ever did. Now, do I want to be you? Maybe not. Maybe you're not my favorite player, whatever, but you achieved things that I didn't. And so I would want to hear the information of how to get there. And when you watch, you consistently see clips from all these different camps that he's done of these kids talking crazy, and the disrespect is absolutely wild to me.
Yeah, so it's funny you actually mentioned that. Well, not really funny, but of course that's been addressed. Let me first say, Cam actually has a podcast. I met Cam a couple of times. I met him, really met him like about 3 months ago here in Atlanta. He's super cool. He came into a restaurant I was in. I didn't even realize it was him. Had my back turned. He walked right behind me. And so he, takes my camera. He's like, "You got your phone?" Took my picture and everything. Super nice. But I've always said, like, I'm his biggest fan. Was not pleased with all the off-field stuff. But I will say last week on his podcast, he actually said after about 8 years that he should have dived on that ball. He said it was a bad decision. He was like, I've been meaning to come out and say this for a while, because even saying, I was afraid I would get hurt is not a good reason, because I had the entire off season to recover, blah, blah, blah. And it's the Super Bowl. Yep. Short of being killed, you should be honored to know that you at least tried to win the freaking Super Bowl, the world's greatest sports title to have. Even though soccer's coming up pretty close on that, on the heels of Super Bowl of the NFL. And now the NFL is, branching out internationally. It's really going to be global. And so to know that you missed that. But let me go to this camp situation. So I had been saying before this fiasco developed that there were some kids. Cam had a camp with some kids that were clearly Saints fans. I think the camp may have even been in New Orleans. He travels. And these kids were so disrespectful. They talked about how he lost the Super Bowl. They, talked about how he dresses and, that he would never be good enough to be a quarterback in the league again. I mean, they were brutal. These kids were like probably 12, 11, and they were hollering at him, hollering all this stuff out while he was, warming up with some other kids. So he comes over to him and he's like, hey, where's your dad? Where is your dad? Because I'm not your dad, but you need your dad. You need a belt. Like, stop talking like right. It's an opportunity for you to be here. And I remember seeing it like, dang, just to be invited to this is a blessing. And why would you, even if he's not your favorite player, who else would bring you to this? You probably would never have this opportunity if it wasn't for Cam. Cam is huge in the community and giving back and doing stuff for the youth all the time. He's a big kid, honestly. He's a big kid still. I mean, even though he's like over 30 years old at this point, he is still a kid at heart. He loves kids. He loves giving back. And so to see what happened here in Atlanta, this was in Atlanta, 7x7 camp. Exactly. And he said, I watched his podcast about it last week. He said he's, apologized for his reactions, but I think Cam had like a Superman complex where he thought he was playing in the league again, because I don't know if you saw him. He dropped back and threw like somebody off him, like he was throwing off a defender. And, he just went in it. But that hat is the real MVP. That hat did not move. Right. And Cam has a lot of hair now. And I was like, he is looking like Gandor out there with that hat. Like all he needs is his little sphere, his little scepter or whatever to Harry Potter up in here. But he said he was sorry. And it was actually, everybody thought it was kids that had dived on him. It was some coaches. They had been talking junk the whole time. Coaches, I think coaches and kids, and it went too far. And he basically, the way Cam made it sound was it was, a combination of kids and coaches that tried to just jump on him. And I was like, yeah, you got it wrong today.
Yeah, no, that's crazy in its own way. Like, how is the chirping getting to a spot where you're going to rush the stage that he's on?
I know. I saw the video. I was like, I don't know whether to laugh or be mad, because I was like, well, Cam handled his own, but he literally fought like 5 people before security got over there. I was like, wow, like this dude he has a career in the MMA at this point. Like, don't worry about the NFL.
What was funny is watching it, you're like, there wasn't a real fighter in that group.
No, it was like once they rushed in, it was like one of the Marvel movies. I think with Captain America or someone, like they all rush into Sonia, and then this boom, everybody just goes everywhere because of the superpowers. And so
I think the only real hit he got from friendly fire on one of his guys.
Yes, but like I said, though, Bo, the hat did not move. I mean, Cam all but turned a cartwheel backing out and flipping these guys, and the hat was still like straight up, like a triangle.
Yep. No, that was impressive. I mean, it helps that he's just way bigger than everybody.
Yeah, he needs, security. He got a career. He could do anything. I don't know, but what, I have a question for you, Bo. I know it's your show, but I just want to ask you real quick, since we're talking about Cam. Why do you think no one's pulled him back into the league?
Honestly, it's inconsistent gameplay. And it is, since he doesn't, he's not as physically able as he once was, right? Like he could truck people early in his career, like he could just run people over. And he can't do that part anymore, but his throwing mechanics didn't necessarily evolve. It's something that has kind of kept Lamar, right? So Lamar early on, everybody bagged on him. They're like, oh, he's a running back. And, it's a lazy take, but, people will double down on it. But if you watch him now, he still has that element of his game, but he's a much better thrower of the football, right? And the little bits that we've seen Cam come back, now he did put himself in some bad situations, right? Trying to come back, like when he went to the Patriots, that wasn't a great fit, right? And then he got shoved in early. He wasn't really up to speed. didn't really have, any kind of chemistry with the team. And so it was bad film. And there's nothing worse in the NFL than bad film. Right.
Yeah.
And so when you have inconsistency throwing at a position where that's what you do, and then your last stop is just bad tape. Like realistically, if you didn't have everybody get hurt this last year, Flacco doesn't get another shot, right?
Right.
Because his tape with the Jets was horrendous. Like he was bad. So now he goes and he gets a lucky shot with the Browns, right? Because literally everybody got hurt, and then everybody's backup got hurt. So he gets a shot, he balls out, he'll be on a roster next year. If he didn't have that little window, never happened, right? Baker had a hard time landing somewhere until he got some good tape. Unfortunately, the last tape that Cam has is bad tape. And the league will absolutely walk away from you if the last thing they see isn't good.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, remember we gave him another chance. We brought him back to Carolina against the Cardinals game, and he was like, "I'm back." And I remember
that was last good play though.
It's funny because I was in North Carolina. The game was in Charlotte, I believe, and I was told that he wasn't going to actually take the field. So I was like, okay, I'll just listen to the game. So I'm driving back, and I have to go through Charlotte to get back to Atlanta because where my family lives, they're in Greensboro. And I'm listening on Sirius XM in the NFL app, and they are playing the game, and all of a sudden they're like, Cam Newton. I was like, no, I need to.
Why am I on the road?
Yes. So I'm pulling pulling up my DirecTV streaming app. And I was like, I got to see this. I didn't know he was going to be playing. I literally was scrambling to find an exit to get off. Like, I've got to watch this. I didn't know this is the first down he's taking with us. So I had missed the I'm back part by the time I found somewhere to pull off. Everybody was blowing me up. Girl, why did you tell me Cam was back? And I was like, I don't know. But the hype was real. Like, but we had like 500 requests the same day to join our group again because it's like all the Camanites are coming back.
That's pretty cool. I mean, it was a short-lived stint though.
We wanted him, I don't think they gave him enough time. He was coming back to a different team. All the weapons he had once known, Luke Kuechly, Greg Olsen, Thomas Davis, Michael Tolbert. Like, I could go on and on. I could name about 20 players right now from that nucleus that were no longer there. In fact, Shaq Thompson is the last or close to the last, I think, of that original 2015 team that went to the Super Bowl that Cam would even know unless there were some people, on the bench, what have you, because let's just, let's face it, they just have not only lost the Super Bowl, but just taken a downward trajectory from there. So does he ever come back in the league? You think he ever comes back? I mean,
nah, it's a wrap.
It's really kind of like I just Kaepernick and Dez Bryant. Dez, they tried to give Dez a chance in New Orleans, and he broke his femur or something at practice. Maybe that's when they were using, hard practices. And the Saints left him off for a little bit, but then he was released. And these are really good. But he had lost the locker room. They complained about him. Dallas had blackballed him because he was going off, kind of like Brandon Marshall when he was with the Jets and with the Bears. They talked about how bad Brandon Marshall would literally go off in the locker room over the whole team. And so Brandon, last time I saw him, he was an analyst. I haven't even seen him analyzing anything recently, but for a little bit he was.
Yeah, he still is. He's still around. I think he's on. I think he's on FS1.
Okay, all right. That's where Fritzy and those are. Okay, because I was like, don't tell me he's on Peacock too, because I can't. Everybody's on Peacock now, Bo.
Yeah. No, I mean everybody's got their own streaming service at this point. But I think he's. I want to say he's on FS1.
Okay, I'll have to see if he's on there.
But yeah, no, it's. I mean, the thing with Dez was he was one of those guys that didn't evolve his game as he started to get older.
Yep.
And, he was a burner, right? Like he was that streak runner, but what he didn't do is run clean routes, right? So he could burn you, but as soon as he lost that half a step, he didn't have clean enough routes to get separation anywhere else on the field. And now he couldn't stretch the field the same way. I'm always surprised when players, as they age, don't recognize the fact that they're getting older, right? Mm-hmm. And they fall off, and rather than adapting their game, it's one of the things that I credit Larry Fitzgerald with more than anything else, mm-hmm. right? Early in his career, he could dust you, right?
Yes.
Then they move him as a slot receiver, and he becomes a Hall of Famer because mm-hmm. he ran clean routes, could create separation. He may not be able to outrun you anymore, but he extended his career so much by being open to changing the position that he was playing. So if you're self-aware, you can play in this league a long time. But if you are, I'm this guy and that's what I am, man, that's not going to work. And honestly, that's some of what goes against Cam is he wants to still be that physical presence, but the body can't handle that anymore.
Yeah, and they kind of make their own plays. I mean, we saw Dez being open several times. Dak just stopped targeting him. And he was like, I'm like, you literally saw him with his hands one time, like, dude, I'm open. And that just spilled over into the locker room. I always talk about when professional and personal situations bleed over, it's going to be a mess at some point. And just like you said with Cam would switch his plays. Like, no matter what the play call was, he was like, if he, sometimes that's okay. The quarterback sees things differently, I guess, as opposed to the coach. But, most of the time you have your coordinators up in the box so they can see on the field. But I mean, Cam is
they're in your ear. It's not even like it's not even like you can't communicate. Like they're telling you, we see this, run this.
Yep. And he, a couple of times he would argue with Rivera because there was a play and he was like, no, I'm not doing that. So like you said, once you are not doing it and you're not running a clean route because you're doing your own thing, and we see this across the league. I honestly thought Tyreek Hill was going to be an issue when he was released from Kansas for the same reason, but looks like the Dolphins kind of let him run away with whatever he wants to do down there in Miami. And so, for lack of a better word, they were making it work. Now we'll see next season because we saw it kind of spiral down as the season progressed. Once his house caught on fire and he had a lot of off-field
stuff. Was injured.
Yeah, he had a boot on. But I think even in those injuries, like we talked about, if you're not following the play calls and you're not, protected, you're susceptible yourself to injury. It's highly unlikely that you're just out there running and you fall down and you're getting an injury. Somewhere along the line, there's a mistake. Not all the time, but some of that can be attributed to the player specifically.
No, absolutely. It's funny because you can do the off-script things when you're winning.
Yes,
but you're not.
Everyone loves it. No one questions it. Like,
you can get away with a lot. Wins masks a lot. Mm-hmm. As soon as you're not winning, you better be coachable.
Yes, you better be, because if not, it's almost like the "What have you done for me lately?"
You'll be off the team.
And look at even like with Belichick, he is jobless, but he is like the winningest coach in NFL history. Like, despite the age, he's not that much older than Andy Reid and all these other coaches that are still out there. But he is at home right now, maybe playing golf, who knows, but not even getting an opportunity in the league, at least not right now, despite his history. So it's like, what have you done for me lately? The Patriots crashed and burned and tried so many different quarterbacks on for size, and none of them were Brady.
Well, the thing that was interesting about this particular coaching cycle is the teams got away from coaches that coach hard. Mm-hmm. So Belichick was out. Vrabel was out. Bill O'Brien is out. Bieniemy doesn't get a job.
Right? Rex Ryan didn't get to come in either.
Rex Ryan doesn't get there. Zimmer only did because he had a relationship with Jerry Jones anyway. Yep. So, mm-hmm. I mean, all of those coaches that really coach hard found their ways out of the league this year.
But that's what you're saying. Like, the game is changing. Okay, so we're not hitting with pads.
Yep.
We're turning the Pro Bowl into basically golf with a football. And now, there's no. I mean, does Dan Campbell stand a chance? He coaches very hard. He invigorates that team. He's a no-nonsense type of person. Maybe because they're good.
If they start to lose, they'll move on.
That's
right?
crazy.
Like, which is crazy because he's built an amazing, culture there. But this is a league that you get one or two bad seasons and that's it.
Not for long. The NFL, not for long.
Exactly. Yeah, they don't mess around. Like, soon as you start to fade, you're out.
That's probably what's going on with Robert Saleh as well. They brought Aaron Rodgers in, even though he's hurt. The blame is going to be on, Coach Saleh because he coaches like that. And now they've, the Jets, even though they've had like a 50-year losing streak, for lack of a better description, they're still not winning. And they've sold the farm to get Aaron Rodgers, who goes down 4 snaps in. And it's going to be dependent upon what he looks like next season, what he looks like after that injury, because we have not seen him take a down since that Achilles, even though he was gung-ho about coming back in December, and they did some practice runs with him. He didn't take an actual, down in a game. So if he doesn't come back, at least 80% of the Aaron Rodgers we knew, if he comes back less than 50% or 50% or less, we may be looking at a whole difference in the Jets front office all around, honestly.
Oh, no, you're absolutely right. So, I mean, the only reason he didn't get fired this year is because Aaron Rodgers got hurt. And that wasn't really on Saleh. That was on the GM not giving you a viable backup.
Yeah.
Right? Because you already knew Zach Wilson wasn't that dude. And so they don't get anybody else. He gets hurt immediately. Zach Wilson's thrust back in there. You knew the season was wrecked from that point on. So that doesn't really fall on Saleh. He was doing what he could with what he had. So it's the only reason he got to continue on. If they had this kind of, that kind of year and they had Aaron Rodgers, he'd have been out the door. But because he got hurt immediately, that's why he's still there. The coaches that stayed in their positions that made no sense to me was Eberflus. I don't know how the Bears kept him. They fire everyone else. The whole team was a dumpster fire, and you keep your head coach. That didn't make any sense. And of course, the Saints coach.
Allen.
There we go. Dennis Allen. So the fact that he still has a job also made no sense, because that roster said they should win that division because the division's bad. And they wildly underperformed with what they had. And somehow he kept his job. Those two guys keeping their jobs, but guys like Vrabel and Belichick not getting a shot is bizarre.
It's very bizarre, because when you look at, maybe the Bears kept Eberflus, at least for now, because they hadn't too long got rid of Matt Nagy. And maybe they just want to kind of at least give someone a couple of years, even though they better be glad that Tepper doesn't own the team. He gives you 4 weeks. Like, he doesn't even care about the season. And I don't know. Exactly. Like, they talked about Mike Vrabel was overpowering, like from a physical performance, like a physical.
That is the dumbest. That is the dumbest take I've ever heard.
I heard that. I was like, what? He looks like Fred Flintstone. Like,
right. So I heard Colin Cowherd saying that. Like, that was part, like, he was reporting on it. It was saying that was part of it, was he was just big and imposing. It's like, are the players scared of a big guy? Like, that doesn't make any sense. The other coaches, like, okay, the GM, on what planet does that make sense? Like, he's won a ton of games for you, and then he had his team playing as hard as they could play, and you gave him a team devoid of talent.
Yes.
And somehow he's fired, but the GM's not? That makes no sense.
Yeah, I didn't understand that, because Tannehill was down. They had Will Levis in as the backup, a rookie that was looking good a few times, and then all of a sudden he just started throwing bombs. Like, it was like a minimum, like, you go somewhere to a club and they're like 2 drink minimum. It was like every game Will Levis played in, it was like 3 interception minimum. And so you could guarantee on that, but they had to work with what they had. Derrick Henry wasn't, in his position as he was not performing at all. But then it's Vrabel's fault. And I don't know. A little bit of me kind of feels like that kind of went in sync with the Patriots, Belichick being let go. I think people expected them almost to switch coaching positions, and now both of them are out of a job. So it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I did think that Vrabel was going to get a real shot with the Patriots. Hopefully Mayo has success there. But the fact that they kept the GM that put out a horrendous roster,
right?
But you move on from Vrabel, who was 2 years away from being in the playoffs.
Yep.
I mean, on what planet does that make sense? Like, no coach would have had success with a rookie quarterback that was throwing to the other team as much as his own and no running back. Like, you're not going to have success. And then for whatever reason, they just could never connect with DeAndre Hopkins. So you have a completely wasted weapon.
Yeah, D-Hop has not been utilized since he left the Texans, honestly, not in the way that he should have been. I will say this is very akin to how, David Tepper is running the Panthers. Now we have a new coach in, and we still have a rookie quarterback. So let's be clear. It's going to be, I don't think he's going to be that long suffering with David Canola's coming in. I mean, they brought in some more talent from Tampa, but at the end of the day, you're only putting a Band-Aid on a gaping surgical wound. Honestly, you're putting a tiny Band-Aid that would cover a paper cut over a surgical incision. So it's bleeding all around the bandage. You're not really covering anything. You just want someone to say, at least I tried. That's the way it looks like. And he's running his and he's running the soccer team in Charlotte the same exact way. They've had as many coaches in as many years as well. And I always say, I don't know Tepper. When he first bought the team, the fans were engaged, like thinking, oh, we got someone that really cares about the team. But honestly, it's almost like Daddy Warbucks and buying Andy. You got to prove to us that this is what you want to do, that you're just not someone out there that's a billionaire that has nothing to do but just buy all these intricate toys, and you play with them a little while, but you don't really keep them clean. You just throw them everywhere, and it's just, that's how it is. You get a new toy for Christmas or your birthday, you're intrigued by it, but only till the next toy comes along. Is your mom or dad's like, well, I got you something else. Oh, this toy is going down. Let me see what else is out here. That's how he's treating it. No,
you're not wrong. I mean, going through the coaching that he has, freaking out on an opposing fan, right? Throwing a drink at him. You're just like, what is this guy even doing?
They said
it makes you wonder how he got money.
They said that's why he fired the GM, because the GM was right there when he tossed the drink and he didn't have his back. So have his back. Yeah.
Like, what's he supposed to do? Put solid windows in front of him so he can't do it?
I guess so, but we're out here making names for ourselves. We got tyrant coaches and the worst team in the league. At least we're known for something. They're clearly still talking about Carolina.
That's right. It's the dumpster fire, but you're in the news either way,
right? Right. Take the press with no matter how you can get it.
Absolutely. We're almost to the top of the hour here. Be sure to let everybody know where they can find you, Sonia.
All right, so you can find me weeknights on NESSP on Tuesday, Thursdays, and Fridays at 7 p.m. and Prim and Proper Sports on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. You can follow me on YouTube at the handle you see here, Prim and Proper Sports, and I'm on all the socials. Bo, this has been a sheer delight. I'm so blessed to have the opportunity to come on and engage with you and your audience today. Thank you so much.
No, of course. I'm glad you were able to make it on. This was a ton of fun. And, I look forward to when we get to play again.
Yeah, you got to come to my show. I'm waiting on your response to an invite. So we'll link up again soon, hopefully.
So just let me know when. So I'm back from vacation now. So just let me know what your schedule looks like, and we will make it happen.
We sure will. Thanks so much, Bill. Bye, everyone.
Have a good one.
You too.
All right. And of course, if you are on Roku, be sure to hang out for the next hour. It'll be me, and we'll be doing Hawk Talk. It'll be the last one of the regular or of the league year. And then we'll be moving into season 3. So this will be the last one for season 2. Other than that, we will see you here in a few minutes. If this is it for you guys, enjoy the rest of your day. Otherwise, we will see you in a couple of minutes.